The video you're about to watch is the second part of a complete retrospective on the new Super Mario series. If you have not seen my first video on New Super Mario Bros. DS, I would recommend you doing that first before watching this. Otherwise, welcome back. This retrospective was supported by patrons such as John Hancock, Miles Mann, Amanda Guth, and SN. Now let's get back to it.
New Super Mario Bros. Wii!
Well, with the success of both the first game and the Wii itself, it should basically come to no surprise that Nintendo would release a successor on their home console at the time. You know, I was really excited for this game when it was first announced. I don't know how many of you remember this, but during the Wii's prime, there used to be a channel on there called the Nintendo channel. It was basically a channel where Nintendo would post all the newest trailers and previews. Whenever there was an E3, the stuff Nintendo showed off there would be here on the Nintendo channel for everyone to check out. The Nintendo channel was the very first time I heard about Mario Bros. Wii, and I was pretty hyped, for one reason and one reason alone. 4-player co-op. I don't know what the hell took Nintendo so long to make a mainline 4-player Mario game, but goddamn, it was finally coming. In spite of my initial excitement, today I find the multiplayer aspect specifically is both Mario Wii's biggest strength and weakness. What do I mean by that? I'll tell you after the story. Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach are all celebrating her birthday. Also, these two toads are there too for some reason. Then a giant cake gets scooted in, and out pop the Koopalings. They throw the cake on top of the princess, which somehow translates to trapping her and not killing her, and the cake is stowed onto their airship. Our heroes, Mario, Luigi, and two random toads, all chase after the airship to save her. These two other toads, which I guess have been deemed less important by the game looking to help, shove Peach's presents into a cannon and shoot them out to our heroes. Which begs the question, why did they get Princess Peach a bunch of propeller hats and penguin suits as presents? Probably a kink or something, I don't know. So it's up to you, and maybe 3 other people if you got friends, to travel through 8 worlds and defeat Bowser and yada yada yada. We've seen all this before. I mean, like, we've really seen this before. All 8 world themes are the same exact themes we saw on the DS. If you've ever wondered why this series has garnished the notorious claim that they're all the same game, it all started here. It's not uncommon to have returning themes in a new Mario, but for literally every single world to be recycling the themes from the last game. That's pretty damn lazy. Thankfully, the overworlds are a bit more expansive. As to say, they're not always a straight path from left to right. World 6 is especially cool, because it sees you scaling a mountain. I also appreciate how, unlike DS, there's a bit more animation than just a path appearing. In many instances, you will see the land terraform, just like in Mario World. But there I just did it again. Compared a feature to something present in a previous title. Everything here is extremely polished. And if this was one of your first Marios, you wouldn't even know what was or wasn't being reused. You would just be having a good time. That being said, longtime fans, and especially those who play DS, will definitely know what's up right away. Reused world themes, reused level ideas, reused assets, even most of the music is reused. Really, start to finish, we get majorly new Super Mario Bros. DS music. The Wii renditions of these songs definitely sound cleaner, but I don't know about better. The DS sounds had a ton of energy to them. The main theme really exemplified this by the backing chiptune sounds. Take a listen. Now here's that same exact song on the Wii. Again, a cleaner sound overall, but that energy is totally gone. Mario Bros. Wii doesn't have many new enemies either. I mean, it technically does, but they're mostly variations of the enemies we've seen in previous Mario games. For example, Mario Bros. Wii introduces Big Fuzzies, which are just the big versions of Fuzzies from Mario World. There's a Big Urchin, which again is a big version of a Mario World enemy. Then there's a Heavy Parabeetle, which is just... Are you seeing a pattern here? Really, the only enemies that come to mind that aren't some sort of variation on an older enemy are the vine leg dudes in World 5 and the sliding penguins from World 3. There's nothing wrong with using a handful of classic baddies, but new enemies are such a quintessential part of a new Mario game that the game won't feel too new without them. So some stuff is reused. Whatever. What was I saying about the multiplayer being both a strength and a weakness? It's clear Nintendo had 2 goals of Mario Bros. Wii. Those goals being to design a game around multiplayer and making the game accessible enough so players wouldn't feel the multiplayer was too hindering. In this regard, NSMB Wii does exactly what it sets out to do. Levels follow a proven formula, and multiplayer is a lot of fun. The only thing that could have been better maybe is the game not pausing every time a player gets hit. Oh, and also this bubble shit, I guess. When you're playing multiplayer, whenever you die, you come back in a bubble. You can also use the A button to put yourself in the bubble at will, so you can catch up to the other players. The problem? The A button is right next to the D-pad! And if you accidentally press it when there is no other active players, it's an automatic loss.
Oops. Oops. Oh, I'm just gonna well, there you go. Good job.
Why would they let you accidentally go into a bubble if you're just going to lose a life? Other than that, the fundamentals of multiplayer work just as one may expect. And again, it's fun. That sounds pretty good, right? What the hell is my problem? The way I see it, formulaic levels to compensate for players results in 3 main issues: empty level design, uninspired level design, and easy level design. Let's go one by one. What do I mean by empty? If we compare Wii to DS, even by the very first level, the Wii version uses considerably more blank space. At first, I thought this may be due to the fact the screen is more zoomed out, but continuing to use 1-1 as an example, here is Mario Wii running at the same resolution scale as DS, and things still seem pretty unpopulated. Wider platforms, big open areas devoid of enemies. This isn't a coincidence. Anyone who's ever played Mario 3D World knows just how crazy multiplayer Mario can get. So when structuring the stages around multiplayer, it likely made the most sense for Nintendo to spread things out. Did it work? I mean, yeah, sure. In fact, multiplayer can still be so hectic, you won't even notice many of the game's shortcomings when playing with friends. But this comes at the cost of levels feeling really repetitive on single player. World 1 has a level that literally ends with 3 rotating grass circle blocks back to back without any enemies. That's not level design. That's just trying to fill up enough space so the 4 players can have breathing room. Which brings us to problem number 2, uninspired level design. I should mention that some of the levels in the later half of the game are really damn good. But until then, levels follow a really predictable formula, and I think the game is hurt by the choice to make things feel familiar. One of the more obvious forms of this repetition is to start nearly every level in the game with a power-up box pretty much right off the bat. This is something that persists throughout the entire series, and it's a point I should have brought up with the DS version. Here on the Wii version, however, it feels most counterintuitive. Mario Bros. Wii functions in a similar way to Mario 3, where held items are stored and accessed on the overworld, opposed to within the stages themselves. It's both easy and fun to build up a large collection of reserved power-ups in Mario Bros. Wii, and while a stored fire flower or propeller suit may seem more valuable than a mushroom, in practice, it typically isn't. All you need to do is start the level with a mushroom, and you will almost always be handed a second-tier power-up right off the bat. The counter-argument, naturally, would be that if you choose a certain power-up to start the level with from the map select, you can play that level with the most optimal ability to suit said level, which would be a fair counter-argument, if it wasn't for the fact the game already does that for you too. For example, if you are playing a level with tall vertical platforms, and would be greatly aided by the extra boost up, the level will start you off with a propeller suit. If you are playing a water level, levels where a form of offense is invaluable. It provides you with an ice or fire flower. Designing a level around a certain power-up might seem like a good idea, but the inherent issue of this, beyond the aforementioned repetition, is it makes having a reserve of items much less valuable. When the game is more than eager to provide you with the best tools for the job within the level itself, why even waste that propeller suit when you can just use one of your 20 mushrooms instead? In Mario 3, there was a frog suit that granted you with more efficient swimming. Nevertheless, the water levels themselves never just gave you the suit. It was something you could only get at a mushroom house. What this resulted in is the player having to make an informed decision of which level would be the most optimal to use it. I understand the merit of how Mario Wii is designed. To Nintendo, it is of much higher importance to make a game that is accessible than it is to make a game where all the power-ups have justified value. But in situations like this, I think it's important to look at what is being gained in conversion to what is being lost. Either way, this game is damn easy. I don't think being easy is a valid critique on its own. If it was, not a single soul would like Kirby. And hey, I love Kirby. I bring this up though, because Miyamoto himself stated that the DS version was not as difficult as he would have hoped, and he wanted to increase the difficulty for Wii. Being easy isn't bad as long as the game can still hold your interest. But New Super Mario Bros. Wii is easy in spite of it being designed for multiple players. The first 2/3 of the levels being easy, in conjunction to them being likewise empty, makes for a fairly forgettable first couple of worlds. That being said, maybe that's just me. I'm not here to make fun of someone's skill level. If you think this is a hard game, then there's nothing wrong with you. It probably just means I have less of a life than you. It would seem the general consensus online is that this is the hardest New Super Mario Bros. Game. And no, I don't just mean by this guy.
New Super Mario Bros. Wii is a tough game. Old school tough.
This certainly isn't the case now. One of the later entries in particular is easily more difficult. Still, if we are just taking the time of its release into consideration, then yes, I'd say this game gets harder than DS. It has a lower skill floor and a higher skill ceiling, so while I personally wouldn't consider this game to be hard, I do respect it for accommodating a slightly larger variance of skill levels. I want to get more in depth about the level design itself, because it's all over the place. Being completely fair to Mario Bros. Wii, I would say there's a lot more memorable levels here than there are in DS. The problem is that, once again, they're mostly all in the second half of the game. So if someone, like me 10 years ago for example, were to rent this game and only play through the first 3 or 4 worlds, they would likely just assume the rest of the game is as uninspired as the beginning. But it is not. I'll just get the bad stuff out of the way first. There's of course your boring water levels. 4-4 is especially bad, given there is absolutely nothing new introduced. It's just another uninspired water level that might as well have been in World 1. Then there are some parts in some of the levels that just weren't well thought out. This section of the mini castle in World 4 as an example. This thing right here will drop blocks that will ride on the conveyor, and since the block it spits out is random, I was just sitting here waiting for almost a minute until it finally dropped a smaller block that would let me proceed. Of course, you also have some level ideas rehashed, like the one from DS where you're dodging volcanic rocks raining from the sky. But that stuff is forgivable. Every Mario is going to have water levels, and every Mario is going to have level ideas recycled. Not every level is going to be perfect. That's fine. What is less forgivable are the Yoshi levels. Why? Because they're Yoshi levels, not levels where you can get a Yoshi. Anyone familiar with Mario World knows once you get a Yoshi, you have a Yoshi. Simple as that. You might not be able to bring him into castles and stuff, but even then, he will still be waiting for you on the overworld even if you happen to die in said castle. At first, things seem pretty good here on Wii too. He can still eat and spit out enemies, he's got a flutter jump. Ah man, Yoshi, it's good to have you back, bud. Then you beat a level. Wait, what? What the hell is going on? Why is he leaving Yoshi? What the hell is this game's problem? They can't just bait and switch us like that. Seriously, the game's all like, hey, you like Yoshi, right?
Yes! Yes!
Well, that's too bad, you gotta get rid of him. He's on the damn box for Christ's sakes! And he's only in like 5 levels! The same amount of levels that have the damn darkness gimmick! Oh yeah, Super Mario Wii has those, and it gets real carried away with them. 5 whole levels where you have limited visibility. There was one in a ghost house, and another where you're waiting on this slow as hell raft, but the worst one. In fact, the worst level in the entire game is 8-4. It's a darkness level, and it's a water level. Oh goody. It's like scraping your knee and shoving salt in the wound. If you are an inspiring game designer and are thinking about putting a level like this in your game, then I have a tip of advice for you. Don't! I know things are sounding bad, but reiterating what I said before, it's not all bad, and that late game stuff is damn solid. Just gonna auto-fire all the cool stuff I remember. A level where you keep enemies off your raft, actual beach levels, airships return from Mario 3, skeleton coaster, Darude sandstorm the level, a level where you're bouncing on clouds, a sewer stage where you can change a water level, the inside of a volcano that somehow manages to feel completely different from all the other cave levels, and a mini castle with a giant spike dildis in the center. Oddly enough, I found World 7 to be the most consistent world in regards to quality. Yeah, the cloud area. Who would have thunk? Every single level in that world tries something new. Huge flying water bubbles, giant fuzzies that ride along rails, these platforms you can snap from left to right by tilting the controller. Hell, even the ghost house is alright. They use a bunch of the boxing glove ghosts to punch barrels down at you Donkey Kong style. In fact, the mini castle is good too. It actually uses the vertical space effectively. Using a chain rope elevator, you can swing left to right. Not to mention, this world has the only big castle that ends up feeling unique. This is thanks to all the castle walls being destroyed, which exposes the cloudy world you've just been exploring. If all of the new Super Mario games consistently tried to shake up the level design with new or clever ideas as much as this single world does, then no doubt this series would have a much better reputation. World 7 leading into World 8 was getting me really excited for just what the last castle would be, because World 8, especially compared to DS, was moderately challenging. But if we are comparing this to DS, then the last castle was pretty damn underwhelming. On the DS, it felt like a real gauntlet. You were flipping the entire level upside down to reach new areas, everything was tightly and ingeniously designed. Unfortunately, the final castle on Wii lasts all of 2 minutes. Thankfully, the final fight against Bowser is pretty damn climactic. Mild spoilers for the rest of the games here, but this This is easily the best Bowser fight in the entire NSMB series. Unfortunately, he doesn't make up for the rest of the bosses. As you could have guessed from the intro, the Koopalings make a return, and as bad as that sounds in today's context, I'm going to cut New Super Mario Bros. Wii a bit of slack here, because this is the first time we saw them since Super Mario World. We will be seeing these guys later, but for the Wii, it was a nice revival. The fights themselves, however, a huge step back from DS. I won't pretend like all the bosses in DS were the most ingenious things ever, but at least they felt different. Here on the Wii though, nuh-uh. Almost every single boss fight takes place in an empty room, and the strategy is exactly the same for all of them. You stomp on their head, they spin around, they pop out, you stomp again, rinse and repeat. To make matters even worse, you fight each of these guys 2 times each. Yeah, once in their respective mini castle, and then again in their big castle. Giving even more praise to World 7, the single boss I specifically remember being cool was the second fight against Ludwig. You're fighting on 3 wobbly suspended platforms that are racing upward the entire battle. That is awesome. The rest though, I wish they would have done a little more to shake things up. Is there anything entirely new to New Super Mario Bros. Wii? Yeah, there's a few things. Of course, as mentioned, there's the 4-way multiplayer. There's a new item minigame. In fact, it's easily the best one in the entire series. It is luck-based, but you can walk out of these things with a huge haul of items. Definitely beats that item roulette in DS. There's a new move thanks to the motion controls of the Wii, the mid-air spin. To pull it off, you shake the remote while airborne. I'm sure all of you know what I think of the Wii's motion controls by now, but honestly, it works pretty well here. In general, I think the spin is a great addition, especially for newbies, since it helps you correct a poorly timed jump. And if you're more of a veteran, it allows you to travel much greater distances with just a basic jump. As expected with any new Mario, we get our hands on some new power-ups. There are once again 3 new ones, but there's a bit of overlap with 2 of them. There's an ice flower that, as the name would suggest, lets you shoot ice balls opposed to fireballs. But then there's also the penguin suit that also lets you throw ice balls, and has the additional bonus of faster swimming and letting you slide. In other words, as cool as Ice Flower is, it's objectively worse than the penguin suit, which begs the question why they included both in the same game. Then there's the propeller suit. On one hand, it makes Mario look pretty dumb. In fact, it's likely the dumbest looking power-up ever. For anyone of overly protective parental figures out there, I imagine this is what they may have made you dress like when you told them you wanted to ride your bike. But on the other hand, you get some insane vertical elevation with this. Just one shake of the Wiimote, and you're shooting up to the top of the screen. Just like the mid-air spin, the motion controls are used once again to activate the suit, and they work pretty well here. For the most part. When the game expects you to use them in a life or death situation is when the problem arises. Finally, we have 2 new modes. And look, I'm not even going to try to humor these. They are the worst extra modes in any Mario game I have ever played. So we have Free For All and Coin Battle. Free For All is so pointless and makes absolutely no sense. I should mention neither mode explains how it works. But for Coin Battle, that's fine enough, because it's fairly self-explanatory. You battle for coins. Simple as that. You pick a level, and by the end, it tallies up who has collected the most coinage to determine a winner. Free For All, on the other hand, man, I have no idea. I think you're battling for the highest score, but it doesn't have any sort of fanfare for the winner. It doesn't say who won, no victory music, no crown, nothing. Really, I'm serious. I'll show you exactly what it looks like when you complete a level in Free For All. What the hell was that about? Nothing happened. Then it says team finished? Was this mode not called Free For All? Why wouldn't you just play the main game then? What is the point of this mode? A really big downgrade from the extras in DS if you ask me. Scratch that. If you ask anyone who is sane. I know that was a bitter note to end on, but that's really NSMB Wii in a nutshell. A large series of ups and downs. It's pretty easy to point out the flaws of New Super Mario Bros. Wii. There's a lot of them. And frankly, this game is all over the place in terms of quality. In many instances, you can tell they gave it their all, like in the levels of World 7. And then there's other times where it is so lazy, they literally use the font Arial for all the menu text. I'm not even kidding. Despite the nitpicks, come on, it's 4-player Mario. That's a pretty big deal. The biggest highlight of NSMB Wii is its multiplayer. For Nintendo's first time dabbling in a multiplayer Mario adventure, I gotta say, they really knocked it out of the park. I can critique this game all I want, but at the end of the day, I still had the most fun playing this Mario Bros. With 3 other players than any other of the future entries. Even on single player, I was genuinely surprised just how enjoyable the Wii version gets. The beginning couple of worlds can be a bit uninspired, but if you stick it out till the end of the game, I think you'll find this one to be a great time as well, which is something that I wish somebody would have told me when I first played it. Nevertheless, this puts Mario Wii in an awkward position, because something I will always hold true to is that the 2 most important parts of any game is the beginning and how it ends. How a game ends is important because that's the lasting impression a player is left with when completing a game. And the beginning is important because that's the player's first impression of a game. If a game has a weak start, it's unlikely you'll even bother to get to the end. Further proof of that is that 9 years ago, I simply didn't. To anyone new to my channel, I don't want you to think I'm saying Mario Wii is some terrible abomination. Trust me, I am very familiar with how certain people respond when you aren't as enthusiastic about something as they are. But when it comes to game design, I like to be forward with my thoughts and honest with the viewer. All this being said, I certainly don't want anyone to think I straight up do not like this game, because I do. In fact, out of all these games, Wii is the version I'd most want to go back to right now. Overall, I think New Super Mario Bros. Wii is pretty good, which is something that 9 years ago, I thought would never come out of my mouth. I certainly had a lot more to say about it than I thought I would, so that has to count for something. I'd say the multiplayer makes up for most of the game's shortcomings, but if Nintendo was going to bring us more Mario Bros., they would really need to step things up for the sequel. Did they? Time for the next game. Hey, thanks for watching up to part 2 of my retrospective. This series was funded by patrons such as John Hancock, Amanda Guth, Rami Batter, Miles Mann, Aiden Ross, SN, Ken Colton, King Cosmic, Martin Hoshtahagen, Jeffrey Long, Cashinator, Pretoria Mars, and Abby Knudsen. As always, thank you all so much. And until next time, have a good one.